So I've been waiting a little bit to make this video because that case we've all been waiting for was delayed. But luckily I got my hands on it now. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the Ultra Hybrid T. This is probably the most praised case I've ever seen. So my expectations are very high. So I tested it out for a few days and I must say the camera control button has finally gotten some use. Where before taking a photo was sort of difficult, you could still control that button and zoom in and out and whatnot, but actually taking a photo without shaking was quite difficult. But I finally get it. This button is indeed very good. It's nearly as sensitive as the button on the iPhone itself. I notice sometimes that there is a little input lag, so to say, but ever so slightly. Now to delve further into that, what I mean is that with the actual button you swipe across it one time and it will be a little more responsive. You have 0.5 one time and 2 times or even 5 times zoom. On the actual button, one swipe across it would be 0.5 to 5 times zoom instantly. But here it's more controlled, so to say. So it will most of the time only register one swipe. You can still go from 0.5 to 5 times zoom in one go, but with very specific movement over that button, which is different from the actual button. Now I know we're nitpicking here, but I'm getting spammed with comments of people that just want a button. So I want to describe my experience as detailed as possible. It works out fantastic though, and that responsive thing isn't really an issue for me at all. It could actually be written off as a net positive, since now the button is more controlled instead of flying all over the zooming function. The case itself is just like the regular Ultra Hybrid though. The color we have here is the frosted black, which looks great too, especially with that frosted backplate, which will still let the color through only a little, and it just makes the desert titanium colored iPhone just that little bit more beautiful with this case on there. Then there's of course multiple variants to the Ultra Hybrid, and I have a lot to discuss, so let's go over those real quick. Like the 01, which is still as awesome as before, and even though the sides are exactly the same as with the T variant, the backplate certainly isn't, since on the 01 it's much grippier. For now though, they have a deep cutout still, which is very comfortable to use, but it's only a matter of time I think before they replace that with the button like the T variant. Good fit here too, clicky buttons, but ever so slightly less tactile than without a case. That's pretty much exactly the same as on this Neo variant. But what I like about this is that it goes with every color iPhone. And you can also feel the design on the backplate, which is extra cool. The coil, the chips, you can feel everything, and it all has a different texture as well. Now that's pretty cool. It also features that deep cutout instead of a button, and everything else is just the same here. They also have this natural titanium colorway, which is very comfortable since it features those soft silicone sides. And here you can also notice those corner bumps on the backplate a little better, which helps with the wobble while laying it flat on a table. The clear case variant also looks amazing still and feels very grippy, much more than on the other variants. Then there's also the Ultra Hybrid Classic, and even though I love this idea, it's just done poorly here in my opinion. The iPod design is just a picture, and a low resolution one at that. The sides are exactly the same as the black version, just white this time around. Everything else is still the same though, so if you like its design, it's still the same Ultra Hybrid case. I just don't like it. Finally, there's also the Ultra Hybrid S, which is once again exactly the same. Very strong MagSafe, just like the other ones, but here they added a kickstand, and a very sturdy one at that. They've also still got that C1 design, and I gotta say they really fixed that fit issue I had with it the previous year. It's night and day now. You can easily get it off the phone too without messing up your hands, which is awesome to see. Available in multiple colors, and I think that orange looks really cool in combination with that desert titanium. Don't you think? It just looks too cool. Still a huge fan of that design as well, which hasn't changed but still deserves praise I think. Very good MagSafe, and it once again features that deep cutout for the camera control button, which which is very comfortable to use and offers more than enough room. The buttons look awesome and are also very clicky. That silver front edge looks very unique too, especially in combination with that orange this time around. Features minimal but enough front protection, and still that same way of installing the case too, with that piece at the back which you will have to pop off if you want to install the case and pop back in if you want to make sure it's going nowhere. On the inside you still have that bouncy foam-like material which will make sure your phone won't get damaged when dropping it, because of course there's more to dropping than just the initial damage. That black color variant also looks amazing, and I think it's a cool feature that it still shows the Apple logo in the middle of the iPhone. Minimal but good camera bump and good cutouts at the bottom as well, without anything to make it less comfortable. Now when it comes to the slim armor, I still love its design. It's one of those cases that has a soft inner and a hard plate on the outside for ultimate drop protection. A very comfortable case, feels a lot rounder than the original shape, which is better for grip I'd say. Still that strong kickstand on the back, which clicks back in very satisfyingly. But when it comes to that camera bump and that ring in the middle, which is lowered, I just don't really like those features. I'd much rather have it like on the Fold 6, without that circle on the backplate. And since it's lowered and sort of exactly where you hold the phone, it's a funny experience. I like the unique button designs though, very big buttons and they're clicky too. Fitting of a more bulky case, even though it's what the name suggests still, slim. Once again, that deep cutout here too, which works perfectly fine. The only thing I would add to that though, is that now that the sides are thicker, you can notice that cutout a little more while holding it. Not uncomfortable, but just different. The case comes in two colors, gunmetal and black. Now if I hold them side by side, you can also see just how much bigger the 16 Pro Max case is next to the gunmetal on the 16 Pro variant. Which one do you like the most? I think I like the gunmetal the best. It just gives that nice contrast which I can appreciate a little better. The rugged armor is a relatively flexible case compared to what we've seen so far. Also features that little soft foam-like material on the inside and even on the edges too. Really easily installed but a very snug fit. This is how it should be. Very clicky buttons, a grippy backplate with a nice texture to it, contrasted by that soft carbon fiber which is shiny, a deep cutout for the camera control button which is comfortable. It does feature that soft connection piece though, and sadly here it does impact the corner strength. We've seen this story before and on other cases, and it's indeed the case here too. Still awesome that they've included that unique camera bump for the 16 series instead of a full square. And even though simple, it's a very strong plastic camera bump, which works perfectly fine. They also removed that texture on the front bumper, which is a nice and important detail since swiping with a textured front isn't really comfortable. So that's awesome too. The texture is still present at the bottom though, so that's not great. Still, it's not as apparent as it may look. And even with the texture there, it's still pretty comfortable. Now of course they also have the tough armor, which I drop tested with the 15 Pro. It's a two-part design here with a harder backplate and a softer silicone-like inner. Here though, the backplate feels a little weaker than with the slim armor, which is probably a different material. Camera bump is still minimal for my taste, especially when it comes to a thicker / bulkier case like this one. It just looks off, I think. Now it still features that flimsy kickstand. Even though it may look flimsy, it can take a beating for sure, and it works like intended. I've tested it with the drop test, so I am sure of it. The inside features a lot of that foam-like material as well, so that will take the beating. Fit is also really good. Buttons are very clicky. And even though it features those thicker sides again, the camera control cutout didn't bother me as much. It sort of fits in the palm of your hand and doesn't feel annoying at all. What does feel annoying is that piece at the bottom though. They sort of made a cutout there, which looks cool, but it's annoying while holding it. Oh, and the camera control cutout does feature that soft connection piece, but the corner isn't affected at all. Camera bump looks unique on the 16 series too, so they did their best. We're not 100% there yet, but this case is growing on me for sure. We'll see if it gets better next year. Ooh, the thin fit. I remember this case. Very strong MagSafe, excellent fit, feels slim still, with clicky buttons, soft bottom cutouts, a deep camera control cutout, so it basically ticks all of the boxes, strong and big enough camera bump, and that's on both models. A tiny bit flexible if you will, but you can notice that it's still very strong. Unfortunately, it suffers from that weak corner due to the soft connection piece on the camera control cutout, and it's now easily smacked off. I also feel it's a little flimsy around the buttons. All in all, a good case, but just not special and definitely has some flaws. Now, a little thicker of a case is the Optik Armor. They revised this design a lot and I think I am finally able to like it a little better. I just hate the fact that when you open the camera plate, so to move it from the other side, which is basically the whole stick with this case, it will be bigger than the case itself, which is necessary still, otherwise that plate would be in front of the lens a little bit, but I'm sure there is a solution for that. Now, it does click in place though, so it's not like you would accidentally push it back or something. But if you hold it horizontally to use the camera control button, now it's sort of in the way. Now it features that textured backplate again, which will make it a lot grippier. It also has a seamless transition towards the sides, which don't feature that same texture, so a unique feeling when you hold this case. But it does have its own way of making it grippier with those stripes on the side. On the bottom, it doesn't feature anything at all, which I love too, but then it has a deeper USB-C cutout again, which I am still not a big fan of. Features a lot of front protection and very thick front edge as well. So not in height, but in width. And that's very noticeable too with the camera control button, which is now a little harder to use. Now I've had this situation before with some bulkier cases like UAG for example, and for me to still comfortably use it, I would have to put my fingers over the screen a little, because otherwise I couldn't even reach it. So they need to make sure that this one gets that button ASAP. Otherwise, I would skip it if you use the camera control button. The other buttons aren't clicky and a little harder to use. Nothing major, but still noticeable. Moving on to the Enzo Aramid. This case still feels very premium with its felt inner, which is really soft. Very clicky, silver colored metal buttons, which still contrast that black Aramid fiber so well. And even though that silver wouldn't be my first choice, as I've got the Desert Titanium rose gold-ish colorway, I'd still love this design. And for basically every other color iPhone, it would look amazing. Soft all around, there's not an uncomfortable bit or piece to be found on this case, ever so slightly feelable texture on the Aramid fiber, and once again seamless transition towards the sides. That camera bump is also made of that metal, which looks great, but could be a little more present if you would ask me. But that's also the reason why it will still lay flat on a table and not really wobble as much. Even though it has that soft connection piece where the camera cutout is, the corner here isn't affected at all. And the fit is still very snug. You won't get this case off with a smack, like at all. Good equal front protection, so no swelling at the top or bottom. And I can really recommend this case once again. Just know that it's not the grippiest of cases, but it is very comfortable to hold. Then there's also the Liquid Air, a very flexible, soft feeling case which is easily slapped around the phone for quick protection. Has a rubbery feel to it, so it's also grippy. The camera control button is that deep cutout again, which works well, but sadly has the same issue regarding that nearby corner, which is now easily slapped off. The buttons are clicky though, so you'll get that at least. Good cutouts for the USB-C port and speakers, very easily installed, but also easy to get it off your phone, and more than enough camera protection. I also like that added side grip with these stripes, which due to its material doesn't really need that, but it does look cool. Also on the 16 series, that same camera bump again, which will look great. Now it doesn't feature MagSafe though, it will charge still, but you can forget any accessories on there. And then lastly, the core armor. What I noticed right away are these air bubbles inside of the case. They glued this big piece on the inside where the MagSafe magnets are, so I would assume that it won't get out of there anytime soon, but it does look weird. The magnets on there aren't the strongest either, since its design will create less surface area for the magnets to connect to, as it's sort of placed over it, right? Features more than enough front protection, and the texture is also really grippy. The design on the backplate looks awesome though, but it's still not very comfortable to hold. And that's pretty important when it comes to a case. These edges on the sides feel sharp-ish, not great. You can see that too, they are just too straight. When you hold this case, it will sort of dig into your hand. Now, due to the deep cutout for the camera control, it is comfortable to use, but I'll say it needs a button too, since the corners and the thicker sides are just too big for me to use it. Therefore, as it stands with this cutout, I wouldn't recommend it. Now, you cannot win them all, but there are still a lot of Spigen cases I would recommend. But if you want to know how I rank all of these cases, be sure to subscribe because I will upload my tier list very soon.